Dear learners, I welcome you all to the course Organizational Behavior and Leadership Development. Today, we are going to start a new chapter, and the title of the chapter is Diversity in Organization. I repeat, the title of the chapter is Diversity in Organization. In our earlier classes, we have discussed diversity. Probably I said that it is all about the differences among the people who are working in a particular organization. In this chapter, we'll be having a detailed discussion on diversity. They are the objectives which we'll try to achieve, or we'll try to have a clear understanding about these objectives from this chapter. By studying this chapter, we'll be able to understand these objectives. As I said, diversity is all about the differences among the people who are working in a company. So we can say that there are so many differences among the people who work in a particular company. And if you see the screen, you'll find that there are two levels of diversity. The first one is surface level diversity, and number two is deep level diversity. If you look at a person, if you look at an individual working for a company, you will find he or she has a lot of factors, a lot of characteristics. So here, demographic characteristics are mentioned. I'm talking about the demographic factors or characteristics of a particular person, particular individual. And definitely, demography, it is all about some piece of information about a person, such as their age, gender, personality, religion, and so on. There are so many factors which are included in demographic characteristics and demographic factors of a person. Among all these factors, some factors are easily observable. We can easily understand by having a look at a particular person. At the same time, there are so many factors which are not easily observable. As a manager, we cannot easily understand those factors which are called deep level diversity. So in the screen, you can see that our diversity can be of two levels, or we can identify the factors of an individual in two levels: surface level and deep level. Surface level means there are so many factors, so many characteristics of an individual which we can observe, we can easily identify just looking at that. If you look at me, or if you look at someone, we can easily understand his or her gender, his or her age, and so on, personality, some factors which we can easily observe. At the same time, there are so many factors which are not easily observable, easily understandable. And I can say that until or unless we undertake a research on that individual, that person, probably we are not able to understand those factors. So what are those factors? Say someone's values, norms, even personality, say someone's thoughts or cognitive factors within the individual. If you undertake a research on that individual only, then we can understand. So only just having a look at someone, or by seeing someone, it is not easy for the manager to understand these characteristics of these demographic factors of this individual. So whenever we are talking about diversity, it is all about the differences among the people. Some differences are easily observable, some differences are not easily observable. So the characteristics which are easily observable are called surface level diversity. At the same time, there are so many factors which are not easily observable. To understand those factors, we'll have to do a research on him or her. Then we can understand. So these are called deep level diversity. Say, for example, the difference in values between two or more persons is a deep level diversity. Biographical characteristics. Basically, biographical characteristics are the characteristics or the traits of an individual, of a person, which we can obtain from someone's personal record. So as a manager, whenever we are going to recruit, we are going to hire some people. First of all, probably we see CV, resume, and so on. So it means that as a manager, we are focusing on biographical characteristics of that individual. So again, okay, what do we mean by biographical characteristics? They are the characteristics, they are the traits of an individual, of a person, which we can obtain, we can get from his or her personal record. So what are the typical or usual factors or information we can get from someone's personal record? Say someone's age, gender, race, tenure. They are the measure, they are the primary characteristics of a person which we can get someone's from someone's as a personal record, and these are called biographical characteristics. So they're the major factors, as I said, someone's age, gender, tenure, and so on, sexual orientation, even ability, disability, and gender identity. So they're the major factors which we get from someone's personal record, and these factors or these characteristics make up biographical characteristics. See the first one. Okay, the first one is age. What do you mean by age, or why it is important? Okay, to the managers. There are some reasons. In the first chapter, we talked about some dependent variables of organizational behavior. So we saw satisfaction, we saw absenteeism, we saw turnover, we saw citizenship, we saw deviant workplace behavior. So why is this important to the manager? Because probably okay, there is a relationship, or there are some relationships between agent and these dependent variables. The relationship between agent satisfaction, the relationship between agent turnover, the relationship between agent absenteeism, the relationship between agents and citizenship, and so on. Since age has an impact on some dependent variables on these factors, so we managers are so concerned, very concerned when we are hiring people for our company. And why age is important, or one of the major important considerations okay, for the managers. You know, there is a widespread belief that age is negatively related with performance. It means that the older we are, the lower the performance. So there is a negative, there is an inverse relationship between age and performance, age and productivity. And you see, we people are getting older day by day. We cannot stop our aging. Whatever people say, we are getting older day by day. We cannot stop our aging. Number one. And number two factors, there is a mandatory retirement. After a certain stage, we'll have to retire. So there are the major issues for which, as a manager, we'll have to have important focus, or we are focusing on age, because age is connected, age is related to some factors. Age is related to absenteeism, age is related to satisfaction, age is related to, say, productivity. And I can share some research outcomes with you. Age, there is a negative relationship between age and productivity. There is a negative relationship between age and absenteeism. Absenteeism can be of two types. The first one is avoidable absenteeism, and number two, unavoidable absenteeism. So usually in different researches, it has been found that older employees have more unavoidable absences. On the other hand, younger colleagues or younger employees have more unavoidable absences. But the conclusion is that there is a negative relationship between age and absenteeism. And then I can talk about age and satisfaction. In this regard, the research outcomes are mixed. In some cases, it has been found that there is a positive relationship between age and satisfaction. On the other hand, in some researches, it has been found that there is a negative relationship between age and satisfaction. Probably to some extent, it is true. For the professionals, there is a positive relationship between age and satisfaction, and for the non-professionals, in fact, those who are giving their physical labor to different companies, there might be a negative relationship like between age and satisfaction. If you're an engineer, if you're a teacher, probably again you will have a positive relationship between age and your satisfaction. On the other hand, if you are a rickshaw puller, if you're a construction worker, probably you may have a negative relationship between age and satisfaction. Number one. Number two, gender. It means that whether there is any impact, or there is any difference between two genders, male and female, in terms of their productivity, in terms of their satisfaction, and so on. Different researches show that there is no significant difference between male and female in terms of their productivity, in terms of their analytical skills, in terms of their motivation, in terms of their competitive drive, in terms of their suspicion, and so on. It means that researchers show there is no significant differences between male and female. Again, in terms of their analytical skill, in terms of their proactivity, in terms of their problem solving skill, in terms of their sociability, and so on. So we cannot say that, say, male are better than female, or female employees are better than male employees. We cannot say like this. In fact, there's no significant differences between male and female. But there's some absolutes, and we can find some differences between male and female at workplace. I can mention one or two. It has been observed that female employees are more willing to conform to their authority. They are less aggressive than their male colleagues. I repeat, female employees are more willing to comply, to conform to their authority than their male colleagues, number one. And number two, female employees prefer flexible work schedule again to their male colleagues. So these are the two areas where we can find difference between male and female. Otherwise, there's no significant differences between male and female in terms of their analytical skills, in terms of their sociability, in terms of their competitive drive, in terms of their problem solving skills, and so on. There's no significant differences. And you see, the third one is tenure. Tenure is all about the length of service as an individual. We are working for a particular company, the length of service, and it is one of the major factors which are considered by the managers while they're recruiting, while they're making their hiring decisions, or they're hiring people, okay, for their companies. The tenure is the length of service. It means that to what, how long as an individual we are working for a particular company. That indicates the tenure of that individual, of that person with that particular company. And tenure research shows that tenure has a positive relationship with productivity. Tenure has a positive relationship with satisfaction. Tenure has a negative relationship between with negative relationship with absenteeism. And as a manager, we are focusing on tenure because it indicates the past behavior of an employee. And past behavior is the best predictor for our future behavior. Say, if we see someone's tenure, we can easily understand it. We can guess that what will be his or her future behavior in the days to come. So they're the major factors which are considered by the managers while they are making their hiring decisions, recruitment decisions. So these information, these characteristics, we are getting from someone's personal record. And in addition to these three ones, there are some other factors: sexual orientation. Okay, there is some difference among the people in terms of their sexual orientation, say gay, lesbian, and so on. There are different groups who may have different understanding, different values, and gender identity. As I was talking about male, female, and transgender gendered employees. Probably it doesn't have a huge impact in our country, in our society, but as in some countries, it is one of the major considerations. And disability, yes, there are so many people who are physically challenged, or the special, who has a specialty in terms of their physical capacity. So they are also working for different companies, so we'll have to take care of them. They may have special requirement while they are working for companies, so which must be addressed and considered by the manager when they are analyzing, they are evaluating different individuals for hiring, to manage people at their work. So we are going to start a new topic in this chapter, and the title of the topic is ability. You see, as a manager, whenever we are hiring people, after our recruitment, what they will be doing for the company? Definitely, they'll be contributing to the company. They'll be performing for the company. They will be playing different roles for the company. But their role, their proactivity, their performance will depend on their ability. So, as a manager, whenever we are making our hiring decision, first of all, we consider the ability of an individual. So, what is ability? It is all about the capacity of a person to perform different activities which are needed to perform a particular task in the company. I repeat, This is the capacity of a person, of an individual, to perform different activities or various activities which are needed, which are required in a particular job at the workplace. Now the point is, what are the different types of ability? There are two types of abilities. The first one is intellectual ability. Number two is physical ability. Intellectual ability is all about the capacity of a person to perform different mental activities, different psychological activities. If you see this illustration, you can see, so the person who is thinking something, probably he's going to make a major decision, big decision. He's trying to solve a problem. It requires mental capacity. So it is an example of intellectual ability. How we can measure, or what are the components of, what are the dimensions of intellectual ability? You can see there are a lot of there is a good number of dimensions of intellectual ability. But before that, I can say that how we can measure intellectual ability. There are so many ways, so many examinations we typically follow to measure the intellectual ability of a person. Say for example, say for example, say SET, SAT, Scholastic Aptitude Test, GMAT, IQ test. So they're the ways, they're the platforms by which you can measure the intellectual ability of a person. But how we can explain intellectual ability? There are some major dimensions of intellectual ability. And these dimensions show the intellectual ability of a person. What is the first one? The first one is memory. It means that how many events we can remember, how many past events, how many names, people's names we can recall. So that indicates the capacity in the intellectual ability of a person. Yeah, I mean, memory can be one of the considerations, one of the factors by which we can measure intellectual ability of a person. Number aptitude, how quickly and how accurately we can do mathematics. It indicates a number aptitude, intellectual ability of a person. So how quickly we can do arithmetics and how accurately, to what extent we can maintain accuracy, and how quickly we can do the arithmetics. That will determine our intellectual ability. Verbal comprehension, this is our capacity, this is our ability to understand what we read and what we hear. I mean, what is read and what is heard. How quickly we can understand this? There are so many people among us who wants to read several times to understand a particular topic. At the same time, there are so many people who read only once or twice, and then they can easily understand what is it, what is the topic, and so on. So that indicates our verbal comprehension capacity. Perceptual speed is the capacity of a person to understand the similarity and dissimilarities between two or more things. If you see the picture, probably seemingly it's yeah, we can see that I can put both the same, but probably there are some differences between these two ones. So we'll have to have the capacity to at to identify the similarities and differences between these two. Inductive reasoning. This is the capacity of a person to identify a problem and find out the root causes to that particular problem. If you can have the capacity to identify the root causes, so it is easy for us to solve the problem. Deductive reasoning, it is all about the capacity of a person to understand the consequences of a particular event, or once we can observe an event, like what will be its impact in future, whether we can understand it or not. Okay, that is deductive reasoning. Spatial visualization, it is all about the capacity to visualize things, to imagine things. This is the capacity of imagination of an individual, of a person. If you want to be a designer, you'll have to have visualization capacity. If you want to be an air pilot, you'll have to have visualization capacity. So there are the major dimensions of intellectual ability, and these dimensions make up intellectual ability of an individual. And physical ability, you know, this is the capacity of an individual to perform different tasks, demanding, requiring stamina, dexterity, strength, and similar standardized characteristics, or standard characteristics, or standard traits. If you look at the picture, you'll find that a person is carrying some bricks on his shoulder, on his head. So it requires use strength, stamina, leg strength, head strength, shoulder strength, and so on. So it is nothing but an example of physical abilities. And these are the dimensions of physical abilities, and we can develop by doing exercise, having good food, and so on, maintaining regular. So we have seen these are the dimensions of physical abilities. By developing these factors, doing exercise, having good food, and maintaining regularity, we can develop all these factors, and by which we can achieve our physical abilities to perform different activities which will be needed in a particular organization. And here we can see ability job fits. Different jobs require different abilities. I believe that each and every job requires both abilities, intellectual ability and physical ability. Probably some jobs require more intellectual ability than physical ability. On the other hand, there are so many jobs which require more physical ability than intellectual ability. I can give you an example. If you want to be a journalist, you need more intellectual ability than physical ability. On the other hand, if you want to be a construction worker, you need more physical ability than intellectual ability. If you want to be a teacher, you'll have to have more intellectual ability than physical ability. On the other hand, if you want to be a rickshaw puller, you need more physical ability than intellectual ability. But in sum or in fine, you can say that each and every job requires both abilities, intellectual ability and physical ability. If you want to be a say interior designer, or if you want to be an architect, definitely we require more intellectual ability than physical ability. As I was talking about a construction worker, when they're working on the ground, a construction worker requires more physical ability than intellectual ability. But if I'm talking about a high-risk construction worker, someone, a high-risk construction worker is working in a multi-story building, and probably in that stage, to work, he or she must have both abilities equally, intellectual ability and physical ability, because he'll have to have a balance so that he can work in a high-rise building and can work properly. So all the jobs require both abilities, but some jobs require more intellectual ability. On the other hand, some jobs require more physical ability, but both abilities are needed for each and every single job. And the last topic is learning. It is one of the independent variables of organizational behavior, or in the model of organizational behavior, learning is all about the changes in our behavior on the basis of experience. In other words, I can say that learning means the changes which we bring in our behavior based on what? Based on our experience. If I want to explain it in detail, it must be involved with the change. It means that no change, no learning. So whenever we're talking about the learning, there must be a change. Change in what? Change in our behavior. And it will have to be permanent. You see, will have to be permanent. A temporary change in our behavior doesn't represent learning. So there must be change and will have to be relatively permanent. Number two. And finally, is acquired through experience. Each and every job, each and every so whenever we're talking about learning, there must be a change in our behavior, and that must be based on experience. And this experience can be direct, can be indirect. We can acquire experience directly or indirectly. So there are three major components of learning.